Adobe Acrobat Studio, so brand new. Show me all the things PDFs can do. Do your work with ease and speed. PDF Spaces is all you need. Do hours of research in an instant with key insights from an AI assistant. Pick a template with a click. Now your prezzo looks super slick. Close that deal? Yeah, you won. Do that, doing that, did that, done. Now you can do that with Acrobat. Now you can do that with the all-new Acrobat. It's time to do your best work with the all-new Adobe Acrobat Studio.
Welcome along to this edition of Mutchy and Denno. We're coming to you the weekend after Wolves have found a way of losing at Crystal Palace on Sunday. Not the best for everyone involved in that one, but we're not talking about that game in particular today. Robbie, Andy, how are you both keeping? And Robbie, tell us what we're talking about in this edition.
Pressure's on, Johnny, isn't it? Well, I think a lot of chat has been about the Wolves game the other night against Arsenal. Another great result, actually, with 2-0 down against the so-called, well, they're calling themselves champions, aren't they really? But might happen, might not happen. But I think it was a fantastic fight back from Wolves. But it was actually the scenario around the game, really. I look at it and I think, got champions-elect playing bottom of the league side. Bottom of the league side, 2-0 down. Champions-elect should really go on and win the game comfortably, shouldn't they? And then all of a sudden, Wolves get one back and it's panic stations with half an hour to go by the Arsenal side. And there has to be a sort of a fear factor involved in that. But also, I look at how they went about the game then with regards to trying to kill the game off and the methods that they used with regards to trying to win free kicks, trying to slow the game down, trying to stop the game, forgetting who was taking corners and all that scenario. You've got £100 million player. He forgot he meant to be taking the corners, but that's all about slowing the game down and trying to see the game out, which I thought was absolutely. I was amazed by the whole lot with them in the position they were in against a side like Wolves who have won one game all season, and for them to adopt those tactics. But for me, Johnny, it tells you about the game, the way it is at the moment, the tactics that people use, and it kind of kills the entertainment factor in a lot of it with regards to taking the passion out of it, slowing the game down, loads of stop and start in the game as well. So that's really what probably the subject is about tonight, and how much he feels about it and yourself feels about it as well.
So we're going to call this episode the Dark Arts then, I think, based solely on Arsenal's behaviour in added time of that game.
Well, can I just say, sorry, Johnny, can I just say, it's not just an Arsenal thing as well. You know what I mean? It was in that game because that really brought it to my mind with that game. But you can see it happening in loads of games as well. So, yeah, I'll let you take the rap for that one.
Okay, I will not get myself into trouble with Arsenal because I was actually there on Friday doing a piece with them only a day or two after that game. But I was on holiday, funnily enough, during the match, and I managed to get back to the hotel bar to watch the added time. And it was extraordinary, as you said, Denno. And Mutchy, obviously, we're going to bring you in now, but it was extraordinary the lengths to which those Arsenal players, great players, champions-elect, as Denno says, and the lengths they went to waste time, to try and con the referee, particularly with some of their behaviour, just to run that clock down. I mean, what did you make of it, Mutchy?
Well, I agree totally with Robbie. I was, really shocked to see Arsenal trying to waste time and doing what they did. They're supposed to be the champions-elect, but I think deep down, there's hardly a personality in the team. A lot of tremendous players, but no one could actually drive the team in any shape or form to actually say, we're top of the league, Wolves are bottom of the league, so let's get on the front foot. They did score a couple of goals, but then, like Rob said, to go the opposite way then and get behind the ball, it's as if they're frightened. And apparently, they did have a team meeting after that game, apparently, where they were rowing all the players with each other and arguing because they were trying to get it out in the air and all that. They beat Tottenham 4-1, but Tottenham in dire straits. I think anyone would beat Tottenham that day. But the pressure's on them, and they've not won. They've not won enough games as yet to qualify to win the league. And Man City are right behind them now, and they've got the experience through the manager more than anything. I would say there's only a handful of guys at City now who've won the title. The rest of them are all newcomers, and to do the tactics that Arsenal did. It's got to come from the managers to a degree. They had no invention whatsoever. And the way I see it is, I'd be surprised if Arsenal win the league, to be honest, although they are a very good side, because I can only see City getting on the front foot now and really, just grinding results out. 3 points every game, 3 points every game, and then I have no doubt Arsenal hiccup. They got Eze in for a bit of flair, and then he plays him once. He doesn't track his runner. Next minute he leaves him out, and he doesn't play for about 7 or 8 games. So it's as if Arteta still doesn't know himself what his best team is and how to balance that out. And when you saw the likes of Trossard, who was falling on the floor left, right, and centre, and all he was doing was time wasting. It's painful to watch, and a lot of people I speak to now say that they think the Premier League's getting a bit boring, where they're all the same, they're all doing the same thing. One team does a long throw, next minute they're all doing long throws. It's as if the time has run out in what they're doing each club, and they're all sort of doing the same thing, knocking it round at the back, keeper coming out and covering on the counter attacks, and it's not quite as entertaining this season, especially, than it has been in the past for me.
We'll take the two bits in isolation there, Mutchy. Obviously, the discussion on whether Arsenal or City win the league is sort of by the by in a way, but there's 2 points there, Robbie. It's the behaviour of the players, and obviously, as two former professional footballers in this podcast who played very high level international football and in the Premier League, you'll be able to say whether or not that's something that was not going on in your day at all, or if there was something going on in your day, what was it? What were the dark arts? And then I suppose a wider conversation is trends, isn't it? What Mutchy's alluding to there is the trends. Everyone's back in with a long throw in now. We saw in the Everton-Manchester United game on Monday night, those in-swinging corners underneath the keeper and all that hassling the keeper, causing carnage in the 6-yard box. It does seem to be back in vogue. I mean, which one do you want to start with, Robbie? Is it the fact that there's a lack of invention and people are just going with whatever's the trend? And also these dark arts that are emerging at the moment, where do you stand on that?
I'm not sure if I call them dark arts or not, Johnny, but in our time, right, whenever we obviously, at times you did want to kill a little bit in the game. If you're 2 or 3 minutes to go and you're winning 1-0 away from home or whatever, you would like to keep the ball in corners and stuff like that. There was never a case of people going down injured, because that just wasn't the game in those days, and there was physicality in the game, a lot more physicality than there is now. I look at the game now and I think you're not allowed to be physical at all. It's a non-physical game and it's a non-contact game. So in our time, it was more verbal and physical whenever you come up against someone. I got invited to the car park quite a few times whenever I was playing, whenever I was a kid in the Irish League, and made sure I didn't go to the car park after the games. But that was more inclined to happen rather than you going down and pretend to be injured to waste time, trying to win corners and free kicks so that you could get the dead ball set up and do what you have to do, because that's a big factor in the game now with regards to long throw-ins and set pieces as well. And I think I look at some of the teams now, Johnny, and you mentioned how they're set up and the coaching. Obviously, everybody's got a set piece coach, haven't they? So that seems to be the case and how they go about things now. But I look and I look at the size, and I look at certain teams, and I think there's 1 or 2 individuals in the team just to win free kicks and corners for you, so that you can set up the dead ball scenarios and bring those into the game. Whereas in our time, and I think in recent times as well, there's been a lot more invention in the players that played the game. Players that could actually break sides down and create things in the last third. You talk about an Arsenal side with Henry and Bergkamp and people like that, which were absolutely amazing size, and that wasn't so long ago. So it's all changed, but it's at the moment, for me, it hasn't changed for the better, really.
Is that not because they're better coached, perhaps, to sort of respond to that? I agree to some degree. There are less players breaking the lines. There are less players breaking through and breaking teams down. But you could argue that defences are much, much better coached. And there are still flair players in the league. There are still, exciting individuals looking to break down. But I just think the coaching has reached such an elite level that it becomes hard, Mutchy.
Well, I think I'd have to disagree there, Johnny, because when I look at all the teams, the way they set up, they all do virtually exactly the same. They're all playing out from the back. It's like when you're talking about the corners and throw-ins and the bombing it in the box, when they're all getting around the goalkeeper because all of a sudden they think the keeper might be a weakness and he can't catch it or punch it out. And then they keep repeating doing that. So they're like robots. They're given some information of what to do. And after about 8 corners and the same thing happens where there's a few fights, the referee tells a few players off, everyone can pull each other on the ground. You'd like to see one player just change it off the cuff for himself and just say, oh, we'll play one short here, or cross one in to try and help a centre half head the ball rather than flick it into the net, if you know what I'm saying. So I'm not sure how brilliant these coaches are nowadays. I think they're very privileged that they've got a good setup. They can all play fluid football. They're not miscontrolling the ball on the pitch because it's all over the place now. And the pitches invariably are the same of the grounds as they are on the training ground. So they're very technical in that respect, because no one ever says now that no one's technical in football, where once upon a time they used to. I think that was really down to the pitches, because the foreign guys trained in warmer conditions on better grass and could get a better touch and control. But I really do believe that they're becoming robots players and they've got no imagination themselves. And when you start seeing you've got the draft excluder, you've got the long throw, you've got the corners at the keeper, you've got them knocking it out at the back, and you're thinking, well, it is boring, because you start watching a game and you're only 5 minutes into it and you know what's going on straight away. And that's not being critical, because what you want is entertainment, really. Everybody does, and everyone thinks they've got an identity at their own clubs, right? But going back to the Arsenal situation, it's all right knocking it in the corners and falling over and wasting time. They have a responsibility, Arsenal, being the side they are, to actually go and take the game to people, where teams like Wolves and, say, Burnley, or teams battling at the bottom, they haven't got that responsibility. They're battling for their lives because they're not as good as them sides, you know what I mean? So are they really taking the responsibility that they need to take to actually give the entertainment that people want? But they all want to win at the end of the day, and they'll do it whichever way they do it.
Yeah, that's a fair point, Andy. And I think you're probably turning my mind around slightly on that one. Maybe we should call this podcast Rinse and Repeat then, rather than the dark arts, because that's what the footballers seem to be doing. But there is only so much, Robbie, that you can do, because to some degree, because the way the analysis has come into the game now, and the way that the mapping of every player on the pitch and the mapping of every structure and formation is going on the pitch. You saw it in the Everton-Manchester United game on Monday night, that the minute there was one or two players caught forward and United turned the ball over, there was a massive gap that they could exploit. And obviously David Moyes will be absolutely fuming at that, because if anything, his players have slightly gambled, looking for the win, but they've left a hole and it's been immediately exploited. I mean, Cunha's ball over the top to Mbeumo was absolutely sensational. And then the way Sesko got up alongside Mbeumo was brilliant as well. So do you have any sympathy with teams, perhaps the weaker teams, not necessarily the Arsenals and the Manchester Cities, but the weaker teams becoming a bit formulaic? Burnley, for example, got that equaliser at Chelsea through a set piece. They were hankering for a set piece to get them in the game, because set pieces are great levelers. The poorer teams can find a way in a set piece. So, do you have any sympathy?
Johnny, yeah, I do, yeah. And to be quite true, and I understand why teams, sit back and then they try and catch other teams in the break, and certain teams are better at doing that than others. Wolves did it under Nuno, and it was absolutely fantastic to watch. But what Wolves did then, they did it at a tempo. Right, it wasn't a case of, we got the ball here and we went forward a little bit and then we come back into midfield again and then we go back to centre halves and we do this and that. It's the passion and the tempo of the game that for me needs to improve. Whenever a side like of Arsenal coming to Wolves, like a Chelsea even coming to Wolves, who should be dominating the game, they have to set the tempo and the passion of the game for me. Now I look at the games and I think centre halves has probably touched it more than the playmakers, in the team, and that for me is totally wrong. Whenever the players get it wide, they come back out again. They come back out and they go back into centre midfield, back to centre halves, and that's really what we're talking about. It's not a case of, yes, they're going to sit back, we know they're going to sit back, this is how we're going to hurt them now. That's what I think anyway. And as I say, there has to be a passion with how they play, and there has to be a pace in how they go about it as well. And I think that's not in the game. And even when they go 1-0 up or 2-0 up or whatever, then that pace drops even more. So it's as much as you said, it's about value for money and having the right attitude to entertain. And I think that's missing a little bit in the game.
It's very important as well that you referenced Nuno there as well, because I think when Wolves came into the Premier League in those first couple of seasons, there was something unique about the way Nuno managed to mould a side together that was able to counter so thrillingly and so excitingly. It found a way of taking on the big teams. And if anything, you could argue that Wolves' best performances came against the likes of Manchester City, Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea. They were the performances that got you off your seat when Wolves found a way, without giving things away, without losing a structure that cost them at the back. They found a way of becoming really, really exciting going forward. But also they had the personnel to do that. And I think perhaps maybe even in a space of a few years' time, are we seeing a situation where the teams lower down haven't quite got the personnel to counter what the top teams are doing?
Well, I think when you mentioned about the sort of lesser sides in the Premier League, in fairness to them, that they haven't got the squads that these big clubs have got. So they're playing week in and week out, and even Newcastle are struggling with that because they've had an awful lot of injuries, and maybe Tottenham to a degree. Even though they've got big squads, they can still field teams. Imagine Burnley or Wolves having the injury list that Newcastle and Tottenham have got. You know, they have to do that. They have to be. They have to make it work the best way they can possible. And it's simple with Nunes. He plays a reasonably negative game behind the ball and then does his counter-attacking, you know. But obviously they've got a set direction of when they win possession of what they're going to do with it, rather than, like you said, Robbie and yourself, if they go too slow, it's a waste of time. So they stay behind the ball and then they counter-attack whenever they can. I just think that the top sides at the minute, they're passing the ball around, and I mean, I don't think Liverpool created a chance hardly on the Sunday, was it? Yeah. You look at it, Man United never created a chance hardly, but they did score a cracking goal on the counter attack against Everton. So all this dominance of supposedly being great at football and passing the ball about, you know, it's fine margins in that respect, isn't it? And I think the likes of Arteta have taken it too far, where they're thinking, well, a set plays. Fancy Arsenal, the size of the club they are, with the resources they've got, relying on set plays to win games of football constantly, and that's what they're doing. Yeah, okay, it'll work to a degree, but you'll be found out in the end. Okay, it lasts so long, but in the end, the players get fed up with it, and they go back to where they were, and unfortunately, that's what happens. And there's got to be a little bit more to it than what's going on at the moment, because it's like watching paint dry, isn't it?
So the real beef here then is not necessarily with the league as a whole. Is it with these top sides? Is it with Arsenal, Manchester City, Liverpool, for the manner in which they're approaching games? I mean, you know, that's a really good point you make about Arsenal. There's so much talent there. I'd say I've never seen a bench, a substitute bench in the Premier League as strong as the one Arteta's got. And they are incredibly reliant on set pieces despite all that. That Liverpool Forest game, Mutchy, I was working at that one, and Arne Slot conceded it was the worst first half of football he's seen in his time at the club. There was just no inventiveness there, and they were obviously suffered from Florian Wirtz not being available. He had to pull out after the warm up. But when you look at a club the size of Liverpool and the resources they've got, I guess the onus really is on these big sides, and not on maybe Nottingham Forest, who had a new manager, Vitor Pereira, in there. And in fairness, it was Pereira's side that showed the most attacking intent.
Oh, we're talking here about sides who have got really good ability in their side and squads who are having it coached out of them, or are we talking about lack of ability in teams? Because that's really what we see whenever they go on the pitch. I haven't really seen a side this season on a consistent basis that's excited me, and I've actually wanted to sit down and watch them play. So that's a concern. And now that's been happening gradually, probably over this last 2 or 3 seasons, when this has been happening, and you sit down to watch games. Still love watching Wolves or whatever, but sometimes I go to the Wolves games and I want to see who the opposition are and what they're like, and like the Arsenal game, the Chelsea game that I watched about 3 or 4 weeks ago as well. Really disappointed in the whole atmosphere and the passion that's in the game. The game itself is virtually a non-contact game as well, which doesn't help with fans watching the game. So are we talking about, have the players had their ability coached out of them, and this is the format that they have to play? Or is it just lack of ability in the squads at the moment?
I don't think it's the ability being coached out of them. I think the ability's there, the coaching is there. I think it's probably the instructions. I think they're probably under instruction not to do things that involve the level of risk that as a supporter.
But
You
then,
know,
Johnny, that's a similar thing, isn't it?
yeah,
Really, because
it is
Eze,
similar.
as much he mentioned Eze earlier on, who was a fantastic player last season for Crystal Palace, and much you mentioned that he didn't go with his runner in one of the games, and then all of a sudden that's pinpointed. Now he probably didn't go with his runner at all for Crystal Palace, you know what I mean? But because he's from an attacking point of view, he was the crux of what went through Crystal Palace side, and that's why they did really well. Now, because he's at an Arsenal side, then that's being sort of looked at and finger pointed and saying we can't really play him until he sorts this side of his game out. You know, so who's stopping the flow in the games and who's stopping the ability and the passion and the excitement coming through?
It's frustrating because it is there. We see glimpses of it earlier this season. It was only January, actually. It was the start of last month, working at the Newcastle Leeds game. That was one of the greatest games of football I've seen in years. That was two teams that really got it up against each other and said, right, if you have a go, I'll have a go. And, you know, it was an astonishing game of football. And I'm sure when the analysts of both clubs got them back at the training grounds over the next 2 days, they were poring over all the mistakes that were in that and poring over the defensive lapses. From a purely entertainment perspective and an attacking, risk-taking perspective, it was just a wonderful game of football. And that's why maybe Mutchy, you two in particular, are frustrated by this because, you know, the talent and the skill and, you know, the ability, it's all still out there. Is it just maybe that everything around that is becoming more formulaic?
Well, risk and reward, isn't it? When Klopp came into England, right, regardless of who he managed, it doesn't matter. It was risk and reward, and the entertainment level was unbelievable. They'd win the ball back as fast as they could, and then they'd attack as quick as they could, lose the ball and go again and go again. And they had a bit of invention in the game. It wasn't, you know, everyone in their own little positions, doing their own little passes, checking back, giving it inside, checking back, all that scenario. I mean, we're sort of repeating ourselves to a degree, but I look at it and I think, well, they're just deadpan. They are robots. And the managers, for me, they're all frightened to lose the job, but they're all losing the jobs anyway. If truth be known, aren't they? There's not many keep the jobs. There's that many jobs people get sacked because somebody who allegedly thinks they know something about football starts sacking a fella because he thinks someone else can do it better. But, you know, that's been going on for years. And you sometimes scratch your head to say, well, why are they doing that? It's like the cost involved. The longer they can stay in the game and the type of money that they're earning, they're fearful to lose. They're not excited. Well, they are excited to win, but they don't put the emphasis on winning. It's the emphasis on the fear of losing. Keep it tight, keep compact, keep possession. Liverpool can keep possession against anyone. They're a really poor side at the minute, Liverpool, but they can keep possession against anybody. What they actually do with the ball, the pedestrian. Jamie Carragher actually hit it on the head the other day when he said, actually, one of the few things he said that I actually agreed with was Curtis Jones getting possession for Liverpool. What a technically fantastic footballer he is, right? In tight spaces, he's got touch and control. He can get away from things. But what he does everything in slow motion. So if you control the ball and you take it longer than you should do, the next move is gone. And it's slow. And that's not just Curtis Jones. I see that right across the board. And when you mention Leeds and Newcastle, well, I tell you what, Leeds are a breath of fresh air to me, the way they play, because they're up and at it. They've got deficiencies. They're going to concede goals, but they're also going to score goals. And I'm not surprised that Leeds, for me, have gained enough points at the minute to suggest that they might stay up the way they're going about the business. You know what I mean? If I try and think of another team, I thought Everton, that they try and get on the front foot. You know, they're not negative anyway. They're trying to make an impact on the game. There's not many clubs I can think of in the Premier League that actually are doing that at this moment in time. And you know, it's a frustration. It's easy for us to sit here and criticise everything that's going on, but it is becoming across the board because absolutely everybody seems to be making the same comments on how boring the Premier League is. And that big F word with VAR, you know, because it's becoming painful, isn't it? I don't want to go on to this actually, but it's quite interesting. Are referees there to referee games or are they there to run games? Because you can't take a quick free kick. Every time there's a free kick outside the edge of the box, it's like watching American football back in the day where everyone's waiting till time out and then the free kick's taken. Every free kick takes about 5 minutes. Do you know what I mean? There's no flow to the game, and that's part of it and what the referees are doing, the way The only thing they do to make the game flow is they don't put the flag up for offside until they definitely think it's offside, because if it goes in the back of the net and it's a goal, they'd be embarrassed, the lines people, so they wait. But that's the only thing. The rest of it, the referees are running games. They're not refereeing games. That's the way I see it. That's all gone hand in hand the way that the game is going at the moment.
That's interesting, Mutchy. So do you feel as well, on a completely different level, the referees are being sucked into this sort of rinse and repeat routine as well, simply because they've got the PGMOL on their case, and they've got they've got VAR to think about. Not so much that they've got the PGMOL on their case, but they've got VAR to think about. And as you say, they're almost being re-refereed from above. I mean, I think VAR has had a dramatic impact on the quality of refereeing. I think it hangs over referees on the pitch, and they can't do the job to the best of their ability as a result. And you're sort of talking there, Muchy, they're probably being sucked in to the same sort of issues.
I don't really want to be talking about referees, because I think they've got the hardest job going, and it's even harder now because they're scrutinised unbelievably, right? They can't make their own decisions, and they're not making their own decisions. They're listening to the headphones and they're waiting. They're just waiting a second. Oh, he's given a book in there because he wasn't sure that it was or it wasn't. For God's sake, get referees who referee in football matches again. Let them make mistakes. Let the linesmen make mistakes. You know, that's why Sky became what it was, because everybody's sitting watching Sky and they're all dead keen on football, and they're all arguing and debates going on, and they've got all these guys. It used to be Andy Gray and Richard Keys, and now it's
Johnny Phillips and other people.
Now it's Johnny Phillips and someone else. But it was debate, wasn't it? And it was good. Now this VAR, it's just absolutely horrendous. Imagine standing there, Robbie, for 7 minutes, right, while you're waiting for a decision, right? You need a warm-up again, don't you?
It's taken the passion out of it as well, hasn't it? You know, I think it's just the passion in the game is lacking at the moment from the tempo of games, right? And fans watching that, they find it very hard to get involved. And Johnny, you mentioned Newcastle and Leeds. They're two sets of fans who really want passion in the game and need passion in the game. And I think any game, Newcastle is one of the sides I would actually watch, because they, for me, with the fans behind them, actually play the game the right way and go and attack sides. But with regards to VAR and the referees are waiting to hear stuff in their ears, aren't they? You know what I mean? Whenever teams score goals, all of a sudden you have to wait a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, maybe sometimes 4 minutes before you actually decide that it's a goal. So that's taken a load of passion out of the game as well. And I just don't like the way the game's going at the minute. I would rather see no VAR, let the refs get on with it. Obviously you can fall back on goal line stuff and all that there, but a lot of people are just talking about let's discuss the decisions after the game with regards to the referees and linesmen again, because it was brought in to improve the game, VAR, and help the referees, but has it? I don't think it has at all. I think it's hindered the referees, and that's where we are at the moment.
Technology in general, Robbie, really, if truth be known, has really got in the way of the game, hasn't it? You know, you got VAR. I agree with you totally. Goal line incidents, and whether it's gone over the line or it hasn't, and all that's absolutely fine. But you know, since Jeff Hurst in '66, things have improved since then, haven't they? Obviously, but it's right across the board in absolutely everything, and the discipline is so poor. It's not true. All you see is the managers absolutely ripping the fourth official all the time, right? Why did they have a fourth official? Don't need to be anyone there. Just get the referee and the two lads, right? And then get fellas putting the numbers up when they're doing the substitutions, whoever is going on for that club, right? You don't need the fourth official. It just takes all the controversy away from what's going on. He says something, and depends what mood the fourth official's in. Next minute, Guardiola gets pulled over and he gets booked. Sometimes he says all sorts of things and they just leave him alone. They're all outside their boxes all the time by miles, and they don't do anything about that. And I'm thinking, well, come on, let's get back to having a refereeing a football match, right? Making decisions, linesmen making offside decisions, right? And, you know, goal line technology really is probably the only thing that we need in the game. It's not all doom and gloom, don't get me wrong, but
we're starting to sound as if we're cynical old pros here, Mutchy, a little bit, aren't we? But it's not. That's not the way it's meant to be. You know, at the end of the day, we're fans of football, and we're watching it as fans of football now, and we want to be entertain, and that's what you're asking for, really. It's not a case of, yeah, Wolves are having a shocking season, right? It's not a case of that's happening, and that's why we're sort of speaking that way. But it's just a case of how you feel football's going, and I also think the players can help referees. The players, every time there's contact with, with someone maybe slightly late and there's hardly been contact at all. They're going down on the ground and rolling around, and then you've got 3 or 4 other players coming across the referee, and they're looking to sort whoever's caused the problem out, and I think the referees just sometimes the Chelsea game that I mentioned earlier on, the referee, I think it was the Australian lad, just lost it completely. He lost it completely because players were in his ear the whole game, right? And whenever players were going down with cramp at the end of it, he was stopping the game because they've been in his ear the whole time.
So from what you're saying, Robbie, we're in a position where it's becoming increasingly difficult for the referees too, as well as everyone else. What would your hopes be then for the remainder of the season? Because so far it's not a grim, but a bit of a sort of bleak, maybe, rather than grim picture that you've presented for where this season is heading and what we can expect from what I still believe is a really, really exciting title race. Where would you like to see this season going?
I would probably like this. I don't think much is going to change with regards to games and how the teams go about how they play the game, Johnny. So that's not nothing's going to change from now to the end of the season with that. I would actually like to see it going close to the end of the season with regards to who's going to win it. I think it's between the two sides, Man City obviously and Arsenal. I think Arsenal will be closer to them than what people maybe think. I think actually Man City will end up pipping them. I think so. I think they'll probably beat them at home, and then pip them in the run in. But that's only an opinion, really. But with regards to how the game moves on, I just want to see more passion and pace in the game, and more entertainment value. So I don't think that's going to change from now to the end of the season. But hopefully in the next couple of seasons or whatever, we can just see that tempo and passion coming back into the game. Because I do feel as if VAR and a few other issues have killed it off a little bit.
What about you, Mutchy? Where do you see it going?
Well, pretty much what Robbie said, really. I don't think a lot will change from now to the end of the season. I think there's a recognition from lots of people, and I think this conversation will resonate with lots of supporters around the country in the fact that it's becoming very predictable and a little bit boring, and they've got to put their heads together. It'd be nice to see a manager come in unknown and stamp his personality on the game like Arsene Wenger did, or Jurgen Klopp or Guardiola, and take a club to a new heights that change the dynamics of it. But as far as the regulation and the running, referees have got the hardest job in the world, and they've only made it harder for them, right? Not their fault, but as I said before, they're running games now, not refereeing games. In fairness to referees, I actually do believe that they've tried the best this season and at the back half of last season to, if it's something where someone's trying to con the ref, he keeps going play on and fouls and stuff like that. So I think they're trying their absolute best. But they need better support and less scrutiny. When a game of football starts, whoever plays anybody, no one knows what's really going to happen. That's why there's the joy of the FA Cup or the joy of a team top of the league playing a team at the bottom of the league. So there's never a 100% guarantee what's going to happen. So let's get back to the excitement of who knows what's going to happen when it kicks off. You've not got all these interruptions going on left, right and centre. The players, come on lads, show a little bit more responsibility, than trying to get people booked and sent off and falling over for no particular reason. That's not going to change in the short term. If they can find a way to sort of stop that, it'd be very difficult really, but because it's like a culture, isn't it, I suppose, and it becomes habitual what they do, and sometimes they're doing it and they don't really want to do it, and they do it because they can't help it. So that's always going to be in the game, and I think it was in the past as well. People did dive and fall over and all that. I don't care what anyone says you did. You'd do anything to try and get the advantage to win a game of football, I suppose. But let's get back to basics a little bit, and all this technology and all this trying to improve things. Sometimes things don't need improving to a degree. Let's not take it too Americanized, right? And let's just try and simplify it a little bit more from next season onwards and stop the bloody long throws and these stupid corners that are going in. And it's like watching sumo wrestling, isn't it? And you think, really, not again. You know what I mean? The referee doesn't know whether to twist or stick, does he?
There's some appalling throws as well. It's not so
Oh.
much that every now and then there's a footballer who absolutely arrows one in at pace, and you think, yeah, that's a great long throw. But the really loopy ones that sort of flop out of his hand and fall just
Come on,
short of the
Johnny.
six-yard line.
Who you
Come
thinking
on.
about, Johnny? Come on. I think the Wolves one mascara, right? I think you're thinking that one because well, what you want is a low flat. It's like a cross,
Like
isn't it? You low
a
flat one
short,
where you
long
can flick
throw,
it on. A
Robbie.
short long one,
A short,
high one
long
as well.
throw. That's what you
But
want. A short, long
Mascara's
throw.
is just is loopy and it goes about 10 yards, doesn't it? Yeah, I'm thinking I've not got somebody better to throw it a little bit longer, you know. So, but that's right. That's the point that Mutchy's making. Everybody, even though we don't have a long throw, Wolves have followed the example as well, and all the
Uh,
teams seem to follow, don't they? Something happens, long throw, we'll do it, right? Even though you don't have someone to do a long throw. So that's really where the game's going to.
And they're consistent, if nothing else, because Wolves are quite clearly the worst team in the Premier
Consistently
League this
short.
season. And
What'd be funny, Johnny?
they
Johnny, what'd be
consistently have
funny?
the worst throw as well.
What'd be funny, Johnny? Right, if someone had a throw on the edge of the box, a long throw into the penalty area, and nobody went up for their team, do you think he'd still throw it long into the box? I think there's a good chance he would.
And try. Well, actually, Mascara could probably get it on the end of it himself. Much he throws it that high, doesn't he? So
Well, I tell you what, he throws it that short.
he could probably flick it on, couldn't he?
He throws it that short. He'd definitely get there first, wouldn't he? Hey, my God. Hey.
Well, that probably is as good a place as any to leave it on the debacle that is the long throws that have crept into the 2025-26 Premier League season. But there we go. Mutchy and Denno, thanks as always for
Cheers,
joining
Johnny.
us. And don't forget,
Thanks, Johnny.
don't forget, if you're listening, please like and subscribe and make sure you catch every episode as we aim to bring as many as possible to you throughout the coming season. It's been great bringing these episodes and we've really enjoyed listening to the feedback as well. So once again, thanks for listening.